So there I was, dozing through the sermon. There I was, dozing through the bishop's sermon. There I was, dozing through the bishop's sermon at Diocesan Convention. Diocesan Convention is a yearly conference of our diocese, which is a geographical collection of about almost 100 parishes spread across central New York. This convention is required by the legal rules of the Episcopal Church. Every parish is expected to send the clergy and a couple of lay representatives. Parts of it are a whole lot of fun. Parts of it are a little bit tedious. And one year the bishop was preaching, and I'll admit it, I was dozing lightly. But then he said something that woke me right up. He said, "We are a diocese of small congregations. Did you know that in our diocese there are only 5 congregations that have an average Sunday attendance higher than 150? That's when I woke up and sort of sat up. And the reason for that is that here at St. Mark's, our average Sunday attendance is about 160, although you might not quite believe it today, we still haven't gotten back into school year mode. So I suddenly became aware that we are in the top 5 for Sunday attendance in the whole diocese. Now, one of the rules of the Episcopal Church is that I have to keep what's called the service register. This is a book, and in this book I have to write down every worship service we hold here and how many people attend. We then report these statistics once a year to the diocesan office and to the national church. I guess this requirement is good for the sake of keeping statistics. But I have to tell you, this can tempt the clergy to the dark side. We all secretly want the big numbers. We want to feel a little smug compared to the smaller congregations. I remember meeting a priest at a conference about 15 years ago now. He was from California. Nice guy, but a little pompous. So I met him, and within 5 minutes, he managed to work this into our conversation. "You know," he said, "my church is growing so fast, I'm either going to have to add on to the building or add another service on Sunday morning." Within 5 minutes of introducing himself to me. I'm not making this up. Little ego, perhaps? And then there are priests who fudge the numbers and write down bigger numbers than is actually reflected by the size of the building. It's odd when you have an average Sunday attendance that's bigger than the capacity of the building. Now, I don't do that, honest. I use the actual numbers the ushers give me when they count. I mean, I know they're telling the truth. Why would I lie to myself? I really want to know the accurate numbers. But I got to admit that I kind of like the fact that our average Sunday attendance is pretty good for this part of the country. And I know that's ego. My very first job as a priest was as an assistant out in St. Louis, this suburban church out there. And my boss had a little saying he repeated a lot in sermons. Came out to about every 6 weeks in a sermon. He would say the same thing. And he said this so often, my wife and I could not make eye contact because we'd start laughing. But really what he said wasn't that bad. He would always say the same thing. He'd say, "That's ego, my friend. E-G-O. Easing God out." By the way, he had a pretty big ego. And you know what? Most of us clergy do. I try to keep mine under control by constantly making fun of myself and training my congregation to mock me pretty much nonstop as well. So while I am pleased that we have a really good number for our average Sunday attendance, I have to remind myself of a song I once wrote mocking clergy. The song is called "Clerical Rank." Now, my daughter loves this song, but because of her speech impediment, she calls it clerical wank. That's pretty good too. And part of the song goes like this. It kind of tickles my funny bone the way this stuff can please us. Our titles and egos and rankings. How does this look to Jesus? Well, I'll tell you how. Jesus has a standard measure for church attendance. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them. 2 or 3 is okay by him. I'm sure he likes 160. I'm sure he even likes thousands. After all, he spoke to huge crowds as well as just 1 or 2 disciples. But a quorum for church, in the eyes of Jesus, is 2 or 3. Jesus is in the midst of a tiny congregation of a handful of souls just as much as he is in the midst of a megachurch of thousands. I have found the presence of Christ when I share the Eucharist with just 1 or 2 people in a hospital room or a nursing home, just as much as on Christmas Eve with a packed church. Now, I am fascinated by some of the research that's been done indicating that church people tend to be a little healthier and even live longer than non-church people. The researchers think it might be partly because church people tend to have healthier lifestyles and lower rates of substance abuse. But even more, the researchers believe that our social connections here at church make a huge difference in our lives. People know us by name, and people care about us. If you're old enough, you remember that old TV show, Cheers, where the song said, "You want to be where everybody knows your name." Well, caring relationships like those we make here at church are good for us. We all need a group of people that knows us. A church community, large or small, can be a source of strong relationships in our lives. We want to be where people know our name. And of course, Christians say one more thing. Christians say that Jesus knows our name. He is always present, whether in a big, huge congregation or with just 2 or 3 friends hanging out. That is what makes the church the church. And Jesus himself set the minimum quorum. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them. Amen.